This modern makes it. Doctor 27 books can explain the relevance of very recent texts, including the Bhagavad Gita and Ramayana. The author of those only 80 of the Bhagavad Gita. He's written more than 4,000 articles on Gita. He provided speakers at TEDx, World Press Conference, UNESCO, Intel, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, MIT, and this study. He's given 400 talks across, his 400 talks across 100 cities, 4 continents every year. So we want to thank you so much for people and others. Thank you everyone for coming today. Audible to everyone? Also visible? I'll broadly speak on the topic of are all wrongdoings equal? Are all forms of wrongdoing equal? So this will be in the contemporary context where there's a war between Israel and the Hamas. So are both forms of violence equal? We'll see that when we talk about the Kurukshetra war, where the Kauravas did some wrong things, the Pandavas also did some wrong things. So are all forms of wrongdoing equal? That will be the topic we'll discuss. So let's discuss based on this verse. So I'll explain each line and then we'll recite it. This is 1848 in the Bhagavad Gita. There's a lag over here on this Zoom. Start now. What is this? I've already done that. Has the screen frozen over there? Sahajam karma kode. Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. Sahajam, born with work. Something is born with work. What is that? Konteya. What is born with work itself? Sadosham. Faults, flaws, deficiencies. They are born with work. Api, in spite of that. Although in every birth there is a fault, that does not mean you should give up your work. Sadosham Sarva Arambha endeavor. So Krishna in every endeavor, certainly there will be some fault. Sarva Arambha Doshena. Bhumen Agni Ivavritah. सहजं कर्म कौन्तेय सदोषम् अपि न त्यजेत् सर्वारम्भा हि दोषेण धूमेनाग्निरिवावृतः Swapnil. Okay, one last time, all of us together. Together. So, okay. Okay. While it is we decide one thing. Sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham api na tyaje sarvarambha hi doshena धूमेनाग्निर इवावृतः. All of us together. Sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham api na tyaje sarvarambha hi doshena धूमेनाग्निर इवावृतः. Om Jnanandhasya Jnananjanशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने. नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद. हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्णा.
I can also share the words here and then share your video also.
It's fine. It's fine. So, okay, where is Connor?
Somebody look on the side clap. It got broken yesterday.
So, thank you all for coming today. And the broad topic which I'll be discussing today is, are all forms of wrongdoing, and specifically we'll talk about violence, equal, or we can say equally condemnable. Wrongdoing is to be condemned, but are all forms to be equally condemned? That's the broad topic we'll discuss. And I'll discuss this in three broad parts. I'll talk about ethics. What does ethics means? I'll talk about two kinds of ethics. And then I'll talk about evaluation. How do we evaluate what is right and what is wrong? And ultimately we talk about engagement. How do we engage ourselves in such situations? What can we do? What we can not do? So now, the word dharma is a complicated word. It has many different meanings. Sometimes it is translated as religion. That's the common translation today. But in the Bhagavad Gita itself, there's not a single time when dharma, as it is used in the original Sanskrit, means religion. because the category of religion as we see it, it really existed that time. Dharma can also mean duty. Dharma can also mean law or codes. Dharma can also mean order. When Krishna said, Dharma samsthapanarthaya. So he's saying, I have come to establish order in society. Dharma can also mean ethics. Ethics is basically the analysis to determine what is the right thing to do. So, broadly, you could say ethics means analysis of morality, analysis of how do we determine the right thing that is to be done. And this is a common question for everyone at some time or the other. In our life, when we are working at a particular job, maybe the job itself, nature requires us to cross some boundaries. Now, is it crossing it right? Is it wrong? So, which boundaries to cross, which not cross, what basis on which we decide things? That is what is the concern of ethics. And that's the concern of dharma broadly. Now, the Bhagavad Gita itself it starts with an ethical dilemma. And to analyze that ethical dilemma, Krishna does a philosophical analysis. So, Arjuna is confused. That's frozen over there somehow.
No, it's from your mobile. It's showing this.
Yeah, it's a good question. This is a technical dilemma, not an ethical dilemma. Okay.
So if you log out of Zoom from your
Mhm.
mobile, then this will go away.
But then people will not be able to see the screen.
They can, yeah.
Maybe what you
That's-
could do is, if you could keep it here
I'll study
somewhere
this side
and see if the screen can
and
also
see if
come
they
back.
can. No. Oh yeah, yeah. It's okay.
It's clear now. Let's see. I'll log out now. Then you can use the full screen. So you want me to leave Zoom entirely? They'll get audio from there.
Yeah.
So now, no, you can keep it here. They can see me also, they can see that also. A little bit more.
Yeah.
No, it's not very clear. Maybe some light has to be. If people not going to see it. Actually, generally, what happens is. If one of the lights will switch off, then you can see. Okay. So not that good. Can you see on Zoom how it is? Not visible. But I have done this before. Why is it not working? One thing we could try is we could use HDMI connection. There. No, here HDMI.
Okay. How?
And then I can still be on Zoom then.
You need a USB-C or something?
I have a connector. You have HDMI. Sorry for the interruption. Okay, out. So this is 693, isn't it? Mandabraja Prabhus? Yeah. Okay, but let's see what exactly is the problem happening. Okay, so from this app, it's becoming like a dual screen sharing. Screen getting shared over here, projected here, and projected on Zoom. And it doesn't support that double click. That's why it's not working. So as soon as I do screen sharing here, then it goes off from here. Okay, that's the problem. Okay.
Your screen is showing you also.
Yeah, now it is coming over there, but here it's not coming. So what we need to do is.
I need to connect this to this.
No, that's okay. You can give this to me. This will come. You have to change to HDMI input there.
Pick it up.
For devices. Okay. Was it the same size before?
Yes.
Yeah.
The same size. So the Bhagavad Gita is a book of ethical evaluation or ethical analysis. Arjuna has two choices, and both the choices that he has are, in one sense, difficult choices. The Bhagavad Gita is spoken because right at the start, see, generally, if we have a moral dilemma means, say, one choice is good and one choice is bad. Say, for example, if we go to a shop and we are looking around in the shop, maybe supermarket, and see, hey, the camera over there is broken. So if I steal something right now, if I shoplift something, nobody will notice it. Now, we may do that, and to not do that, what we need is basically moral strength. Okay, greed may tempt me, I can get away with it. I know it is wrong, but I should not do it. So this is a moral dilemma, where what is right and what is wrong is relatively clear. But ethical dilemma is a little more complicated. This is where this side has something good and this side has something bad. And this side has something good and this side also has something bad. So then here it's not just a matter of moral strength. Here what one needs is moral insight. How do we evaluate which good is more important or which bad is more damaging? So at the start of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna had an ethical dilemma. His dilemma was, some people think that Arjuna just felt cowardly and that's why he didn't want to fight. No, that's a distortion. Because in the entire first chapter, when Arjuna gives his reasons for not fighting, not once does he mention fear of his own death. So Arjuna is not like a new soldier who is forced to go to war and sees the sight of the enemy and gets scared. It's not like that. Arjuna is torn between two choices. One is his Kula Dharma. Kula Dharma means duty, his dynastic duty. And the second is his Kshatriya Dharma. It is his warrior duty. So Arjuna comes to the battlefield ready to do his warrior duty. I'm a warrior and these people are aggressors and I have to fight against them. But then when he comes into the middle of the battlefield and he sees, these are all my people. Swajanam ekatham hatva sukhina syam madhava. If I kill my own people, how can I be happy? What? And he says, killing them will be wrong. He says, oh, they are wrongdoers. Yeah, they are wrongdoers, but still they are my family. They are my dynasty. I should not kill them. So he is strong. It's not simply a matter of emotional weakness. Yes, emotional weakness is there. But that emotional weakness has come from an ethical conundrum, an ethical confusion. And the whole Gita goes into elaborate analysis to guide Arjuna about parameters by which he determines what is the right thing. So essentially, Arjuna is torn between two identities. Am I a Kshatriya or am I a Kuru Nandan? Am I a member of the Kuru dynasty or am I a warrior? It's like for some of us, if we have a job and there's an urgent work deadline, very important meeting or project is there. And then at the same time, when there is some urgent thing that comes up at home, maybe a child has got in trouble in school. Then do we leave our work to go to school or do we say, I'll deal with that later? Well, it's difficult to decide at that time. We may say it will depend on what is more important. But it's not, how do I determine what is more important? So if I see my primary identity as a parent, then okay, my job is important, but it's so that I can take care of my family. So if I can't take care of my family, what's the point of the job? You say, whatever happens, I'm going to my child needs me. But somebody else may think that, no, this is the career that I worked for so much. And that price I'll take it. So it becomes a question not just of the activity that we are choosing, it becomes a question of which identity is more identified by us. So for Arjuna, he has these two identities. Am I a Kshatriya or am I a Kuru? And Krishna starts by telling him, you are neither. You are first and foremost an Atma. You are a soul, and as a soul, you have various roles. So the soul, that is your fundamental identity. And then you may have we all may have various functional identities in this world. Our functional identities may be based on our job, it may be based on our relationship status, it may be based on our gender, it may be based on our age, it may be based on our nationality, it may be based on our economic status. We may all have various identities. That means I'm middle class, I'm middle class, I'm upper class, I'm middle-aged person, I'm a senior citizen, I'm a teenager. All these are identities. But the fundamental identity is that we are spiritual beings. So from this identity, functionally we may decide to identify with our job presently, or I may decide to identify with my gender, or somebody may decide to identify with their nationality. That depends. So Krishna goes deeper into philosophy primarily for the purpose of resolving Arjuna's ethical dilemma. Now, how the Gita's progression resolves Arjuna's ethical dilemma is quite an intricate analysis, and I won't go into that. But the key principle I'm making is that Krishna is addressing an ethical dilemma. And when that ethical dilemma is to be addressed, broadly speaking, Krishna uses the same frame of analysis that he uses, that is used in the Mahabharata. What is said over there is that ethics can be of two broad kinds. One is categorical, and the other is contextual. So categorical ethics means that this is right and this is wrong. Right and wrong are two distinct categories. So for example, the categories could be that speaking truth is good, speaking lies is bad. This is the idea of categorical ethics, that right and wrong are distinct categories. However, real life doesn't always fit into such neat categories. So for example, say there is a riot going on and a particular community is being targeted. And we have a friend from that community, and that friend comes running to our house, knocks on our door, please save me. And then we may take that friend to a basement and hide him somewhere in the basement. And the riot just come and knock at our door. Is he here? Now, what should we do with that? Should we speak the truth? How many of you think we should speak the truth? So all of you agree to be liars. Well, we are speaking a lie, but that does not mean we are liars. Because our intention is not prior to speak a lie, it is to save a life. Isn't it? So, categorical ethics are there. That's one. And contextual ethics means that actions have to be evaluated not in isolation, but in terms of their context. So, an action happens, something comes before the action, and that is the intent of the action. And then something comes after it, that is the consequence of the action. So when we want to evaluate what is right and wrong, we need to consider all three. What is right or wrong? We don't just look at the action, but we look at why we did something and what was the result of what was done. And based on that, we decide what is right and wrong. So, speaking a lie is wrong. But if a person's life is saved by that, if our intention was to save that person's life, then both in terms of intent and in terms of consequence, it is good. And that can supersede the categorical division of right and wrong. So, in terms of context, in terms of category alone, Arjuna might say that killing one's relatives is bad. Yeah, that's bad. But if you look at the bigger picture is who are those relatives? What have they been doing? Now, they have not been acting like relatives, isn't it? They have been acting like not just like enemies, like worse than enemies, isn't it? The Pandavas, when their father passed away, Kunti was told by the sages, the forest is a dangerous place, there are many deadly animals. Better you go back to your kingdom, and that's why you'll be safe. Now they came back to the kingdom, but in the palace they found there were more deadly animals than what were there in the forest. The forest animals didn't try to poison them. The forest animals didn't try to burn them alive. Isn't it? So we have to look at the background also. So the intent, content, and consequence. All three need to be considered. So Krishna tells Arjuna, Arjuna is thinking, they are fighting out of greed, and if I also fight for a kingdom, then I will also be fighting out of greed for a kingdom. And he says, Aho batamash mahat papam kartum vyavasita yad rajya sukhalopena. And out of rajya sukhalopa, out of the greed for a kingdom, lobho pahata chetasa, their eyes are blinded by greed, but why should my eyes be blinded by greed? But Krishna tells him that you are not acting out of greed. You are acting out of dharma. A person like Duryodhan, who is ready to dishonor and disrobe an honorable lady like Draupadi in public, if such a person were given unrestricted power, what would that person do to society? One shudders to think of that. So that's why Krishna repeatedly in the Bhagavad Gita says that Nirmamo Nirahankaraha. That he says, Yudhyasva, fight. How do you fight? Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvaraha. 330 says, you're not fighting out possessiveness. You're not fighting out of ego. Fight for a higher purpose of establishing dharma. So Krishna elevates Arjuna's intent. And the action remains the same, but the intent rises. Of course, Arjuna was not fighting. Initially also when he came, he was not just fighting for a kingdom. But Krishna reminded Arjuna of his lofty intent. So Arjuna at the start of the Gita was thinking his intent is greed. But at the end of the Gita, by hearing the Gita's message, Arjuna understood that my intent is actually dharma. It is to establish order in the world according to the will of Krishna. So this is, we look at intent, content, and consequence to understand what is being done. So I look at this from two perspectives. We consider two incidents from the Mahabharata, and then we look at contemporary situations. So, for example, now when I talk about contemporary situations, it's not to make any conclusive assessment. It is to give broad parameters for evaluation. So there is, suppose, but let's start from scripture, then we'll come to the contemporary situations. So we look at two killings in the Mahabharata that happened, which were terrible. One was of Abhimanyu. There are many questionable incidents in the Mahabharata, and you don't have time to go through all of them. The other is of Drona. So Abhimanyu's killing was where the Kauravas did something wrong. As per, and the Pandavas were the victims. And Drona's killing was where the Pandavas did something wrong. And the Kauravas were the victims. So both involved wrongdoing, but let's understand the context. and how the wrongdoing was done. So this happened on the 13th day. This happened on the 15th day. Now, on the 13th day, Drona formed the Chakravyuh. Chakravyuh was an impenetrable military formation. And unless one had the know-how how to break it, that formation would break not just the warriors opposing, but the entire army. And Drona had formed this Chakravyuh primarily to have Yudhishthira arrested. He wanted to entrap Yudhishthira. And Duryodhana's plan was that if Yudhishthira is arrested, then I'll challenge Yudhishthira for another gambling match. And I'll defeat him and I'll send him to exile again for another 30 years. And after Bhishma fell, even Duryodhana recognized that I can't win against this army. But he thought, if I have more time, I'll consolidate my forces. And another dozen years in the forest will weaken the Kauravas, sorry, the Pandavas. And then I will be able to win. So that's why he wanted to have Yudhishthira arrested alive. Now this was not exactly known to the Pandavas. The Pandavas knew that Drona was targeting Yudhishthira. But was it to kill Yudhishthira or to arrest Yudhishthira? That was not clearly known. That they knew that Yudhishthira was the target. At 11th and 12th, both days, Drona had come very close to arresting Yudhishthira. But Arjuna had come in the nick of time and had saved him. On this particular day, they arranged in such a way that they didn't form the Chakravyuh right at the beginning. Because if they had formed the Chakravyuh right at the beginning, Arjuna would have stayed to fight because he was the only person who knew how to fight the Chakravyuh. But initially, they seemed to have a normal military formation. And then there was the king of the Kaikayas. He challenged Arjuna to a fight. And once he challenged him, he sidelined him, basically took him away from the main army as the fight went on and on and on. And then as soon as Arjuna was sidelined in that fight, then immediately, as per their plan, Drona rearranged their forces and their Chakravyuh. Now, when this happened, the Pandavas became concerned. And Bhima and Yudhishthira were talking. Vishwajamna, as the commander, was also nearby. He said, we have to stop this. And because Arjuna was engaged already. Normally, for a warrior, if they're fighting with someone, to call them back while they're fighting is not a very good thing to do. Also, they felt we should be able to deal with it ourselves. And he said, let's call Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu was summoned. And when Yudhishthira told Abhimanyu, we need your help today. Today is the day for which sons are born. They can serve their parents in their parent generation. Save our army. Abhimanyu was a little apprehensive. He said, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. But I don't know how to get out of the formation after I get it. So Bhima said, no, don't worry. We know about that. Our plan is as soon as you break into the formation, we will all follow you inside. And then we will destroy the military formation from inside. And when you said, that sounds like a good plan. And he marched forward. He broke that formation and went inside. And the Pandavas were about to follow, but at that time, Jayadratha came over there. Now, Jayadratha had a power which was not known to anyone. So, that power was by the blessings of Lord Shiva, he had got the power that for one day, he would be able to hold all the Pandavas back, except for Arjuna. Arjuna didn't happen to be there. So it's like sometimes you just happen to be at the wrong time, the wrong person at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's how some tragedies or horror movies sometimes unfold. So this was like that. So Jayadratha just happened to be there and he stopped the Pandavas. And the Pandavas tried fiercely. Just couldn't understand how is this Jayadratha so powerful. Nobody knew that Jayadratha had that power. It's because in the start of the Bhagavad Gita, when Duryodhana analyzes both sides, he doesn't even mention Jayadratha because he is not considered a very important warrior. but he had this power. And the Pandavas' plan was spoiled. Now, Abhimanyu soon realized he's trapped inside, and he fought heroically. And he defeated not one, not two, but all the Kaurava warriors he defeated. Karna came, and Karna had that swagger that I will kill Arjuna. But he tried twice, and leave alone killing Arjuna, he couldn't even injure Arjuna's son. Seeing this, Duryodhana was alarmed. When Abhimanyu had been trapped, Duryodhana had thought, yes, today we like kill Abhimanyu. When Abhimanyu is killed, then Arjuna's morale will be lost first. And then we will be able to win the next day. So I'm thinking that this Arjuna's son, may destroy an entire army from within itself. So he turned to Karna. He says, Karna, what's wrong? You said you will defeat. He said, I don't know, I'm trying my best. There's only one person who can help us. That is Drona. He says, he will have some plan. And now Drona was also desperate by this time. He was the guru of almost all the warriors. And after being in command for 2.5 days, he had nothing to show for his command. He had promised Duryodhana that when he had been made the commander, that I will arrest Yudhishthira. And first day it had not happened, second day it had not happened. Third day, he had made a master plan. So you have, if you consider a tough cricket comparison, a fielding captain has some strategy. We'll bowl googlies and get this batsman out, and we'll have fielders over here. And your best strategy is being foiled. Like you have bowler who bowls googlies, and the opposing batsman hits 6 or 7 googlies. What do you do at that time? So for those who don't know cricket, the googly is a googly. Anyone doesn't know about cricket? Oh, you're fortunate. When I go to America, people tell me, especially I do program for Americans. They say, don't use cricket examples. Because in America, cricket is an insect, not a game. So, anyway, so what happened was that Drona had nothing to show. And he said, I have to protect my army. And thus he came up with a clearly unethical plan. The Kshatriya codes were that one warrior fights with one warrior. So when Abhimanyu defeated all the Kaurava warriors inside the Chakravyuh also, one warrior would attack him and he would repulse him. Then another warrior would come. Now that itself is over a period of time unfair, because the other warrior can rest, but this warrior has to keep fighting continuously. It's exhausting, but still Abhimanyu was winning. And then they decided that 6 of them would attack him simultaneously. Now this was not just wrong. It was a cold-blooded plan. It was a cold-blooded plan to take down an enemy. And when all 6 of them attacked, even for Abhimanyu it was too much. And his chariot was destroyed, his charioteer was killed, his armor was pierced, his weapons, his bow and arrow his bow was cut at the string, and he just left weaponless. He took out a sword and came to fight, and his sword was destroyed. Just lifting up whatever he could, he picked up a chariot wheel and tried to use it, and the chariot wheel was destroyed. He grabbed a mace and tried to fight, and eventually he was killed by Dushasana's son, Durjay. So this was a horrendous wrong. This was the 13th day. I just narrate the incident, the second incident also, then we will compare the two wrongs. On the 15th day, Drona seemed to be at his best, or you could say at his worst. He was just fighting relentlessly. And not only was he fighting relentlessly, he started fighting ruthlessly. Normally, the idea is that there are celestial weapons, and celestial weapons should be used against other warriors who have celestial weapons. Hmm? So that, see, in general, the war at that time was something like sports. It's far more brutal, so you cannot have a sports metaphor literally. But the idea is that it was primarily meant to be a test of skill and strength. So who is more powerful, both in terms of, so war was not just win at all costs, it was test of skill and strength. So that's why if somebody had a celestial weapon, then they were meant to use it against another warrior who had a celestial weapon. Now, while using that celestial weapon, maybe other soldiers near that person would be killed. But it was not that a celestial weapon was meant to be used directly against soldiers. So it's more that you're attacking that particular enemy, and at that time others might get killed. But Drona, in his frustration, started using celestial weapons just against ordinary soldiers. And at that time, two things happened. On one side, the sages, Saptarishis, appeared in the sky, and they told Drona, "What are you doing? Have you lost your good sense? You have gone too far. You have violated the rules of war. So desist from fighting. It's time for you to stop." On the other side, Krishna, along with Arjuna, Krishna brought his chariot close to Yudhishthira. And he says, Drona needs to be stopped. Otherwise, he will destroy our entire army today. And before the war started, Yudhishthira approached the elders in the Kuru dynasty, Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, and Shalya. And he had asked them, "How can I kill you?" Very difficult question to ask. But he said that Drona had said that he won't be able to kill me. But on hearing a disagreeable news from a trustworthy source, I will myself lower my weapons. And only then will you be able to win over it. So now, Krishna told Yudhishthira that you need to tell him that Ashwathama has been killed. Yudhishthira became hesitant. How can I say that? It's not true. And he says that if you don't do that, they will destroy your entire army. And Ashwathama had been injured previously. So Ashwathama was not in the battle. And now the idea was what? Is Ashwathama has been killed. That means he was injured and he had retreated. But while he had retreated, he succumbed to his injuries. That was what was to be told. So then Bhima went forward. And Bhima started roaring. So Bhima went nearby. And there was an elephant by the name of Ashwathama. And he smashed on its head, the opposing elephant. And there was like a whole band of elephants that were plundering the Kauravas, plundering the Pandavas and the Kaurava side from there. So he killed one of their leaders, the name Ashwathama. And then he let out a celebratory roar near the earshot of Drona. He says, "Ashwathama has been killed." Drona trembled. And then he saw the Bhima speaking. Ashwathama has been trained very well by me. He says, he cannot be killed. He says, Bhima is fickle. What he's speaking is not true. But then he again kept shooting. And there are two things in his mind. One, sages had told him we are fighting wrongly, and Ashwathama has been killed. His mind was very troubled. So he looked around. And he said, "Let me approach Yudhishthira." And he approached Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira also approached. And Krishna told Yudhishthira, "This is the time for you to save your army." Now Arjuna was very uncomfortable with this. But Arjuna's plan was that once Drona lowers his weapons, then they would pounce on him and have him arrested. Arjuna had no desire to kill Drona. If he's arrested, we'll put him in house arrest till the war gets over. Because Drona had no enmity towards Arjuna. Drona just been circumstantially felt bound. So that was his plan. So they did speak a lie. Yudhishthira spoke. Drona has been killed. Ashwatthama has been killed. And then Narova Kunjarova. He spoke whether it's the human or the elephant. I don't know. It may be the human or it may be the elephant. But when he spoke this, Krishna blew his conch. So Drona did not hear it. And then Drona just collapsed. His arms fell by his side, his head sank, his hand it got lowered, and then he just sat down in his chariot. He felt so devastated, both by the loss of his son and also by the loss of his ethical sense, as the other pointed out. He said, just do not fight. And he sat down on his chariot itself in a mood of meditation. And now, Drishtadyumna, who was the Pandava commander, he had been born through a fire sacrifice, specifically for the purpose of killing Drona. And he had been trying repeatedly to kill Drona. But leave alone killing Drona, he had not even been able to hurt Drona. And it's often for people the burden of expectations can be terrible. If everybody is telling, oh, you'll come first in class, you'll come first in class, you'll come first in class, you'll come first in class. And the student is studying. And you won't come first in class, you're not even coming top 10 in the class. If everybody expects you to come first, then the pressure can become so much. Now, what should I do? Maybe I'll break into the examiner's office and steal the exact question. Somebody can think it. So, it's not a right thing. So, there is something which is understandable and something which is acceptable. So, when somebody does something wrong, there is an understandable action or an intelligible action. And there is a acceptable action. And there is, so acceptable means you could say excusable. Okay. Now, if somebody is stealing a question paper, that is not excusable. There has to be disciplinary action. But why did you do it? That also is important to consider. So, what is understandable or intelligible? So, sometimes when we try to understand why somebody has done something, that is not to say that, okay, what a person did was right. But at least we try to understand, why did they do like that? So now, Drishtadyumna had become desperate. He had just not been able to even threaten Drona what to speak of killing. And that very day, before Drishtadyumna's eyes, Drona had killed Drishtadyumna's father, Drupada, on the 15th day itself. So the father that had given him birth so that he could kill Drona, he had failed to kill Drona, he had failed to protect even his own father. He was completely frustrated. And when Drishtadyumna saw that Drona had lowered his weapons, he saw this opportunity. And he raced towards Drona. And as soon as warriors on both sides understood what Drishtadyumna was trying to do, they screamed to him, stop, Drishtadyumna! Arjuna was aghast. Stop! But Drishtadyumna was extremely close to Drona. And before anyone could do anything, Drishtadyumna just charged up to Drona, caught him by his hair, dragged him off the chariot, and lopped off his head. This was ghastly. And when this happened, the Kauravas broke in panic. The commander had been killed. And they started fleeing. While they fled, it was almost like a civil war broke out among the Pandavas. Arjuna was enraged with Drishtadyumna. He said, how could you have killed him? He was your guru. This is a Brahmana. And Drishtadyumna says, this is what I was born to do. Today I have fulfilled the purpose of my birth. I have fulfilled my destiny. And now Arjuna was trying to still control himself. Arjuna had a student, Satyaki. And he got so angry, he charged toward Drishtadyumna. Because Arjuna, in one sense, Arjuna was way above Drishtadyumna. They would not have had a fight. Arjuna could easily have killed Drishtadyumna. Satyaki and Drishtadyumna were somewhat equals. Satyaki charged toward Drishtadyumna. At that time, Bhima came with him. And Bhima said that, what kind of Brahmana was he? That a Brahmana is meant to be a teacher, but he became a warrior. If he becomes a warrior, then we have to treat him like a warrior, not like a teacher. And he has sided on the side of the Kauravas. He caused the death of Abhimanyu. That such a person deserved to live. And as this discussion was going on, Arjuna was still angry, but Bhima stopped it. Satyaki, Krishna restrained Arjuna. And as this discussion was still going on, it seemed as if any moment it would break out into a brawl, into a fight. But on the other side, the Kauravas met Ashwatthama. The Kauravas were fleeing, and Ashwatthama, after recovering from his wounds, he came back. And when he heard that his father has been killed in a brutal way, he decided, I will destroy the Pandavas today. And he charged forward. And when this common danger came upon the Pandavas, then their immediate internal fight was subsided. It subsided. It was forgotten, and they tried to fight Ashwatthama. So the point here is, both of them did something wrong. Both the killing of Abhimanyu and the killing of Drona was terrible. However, if we look at it in terms of these three things, in terms of content, if we consider both Abhimanyu and Drona, it was terrible. It was unethical. But then if we look at intent, there's a big difference. The killing of Abhimanyu and the killing of Drona. So the killing of Abhimanyu was cold-blooded. Cold-blooded means very cynically, heartlessly calculated. The killing of Drona was hot-headed. Hot-headed means impulsive. There's just a moment of wild rage came over Drishtadyumna, and it was not that Drishtadyumna planned to kill Drona in that particular way. He wanted to kill Drona, no doubt. But when that particular opportunity came up, he took it. Now, another point is that Abhimanyu's killing was a conspiracy. Conspiracy in the sense that multiple people planned and came together. Now, we could say Drona's killing was also a conspiracy because Krishna and Arjuna and Yudhishthira and Bhima all cooperated. But the point was not to kill. The point was to stop him from fighting. The killing was not a conspiracy. The killing was more of a lone hawk act. Lone hawk means one person did a particular activity. That, actually, no, the word is not lone hawk, it's lone wolf. There are some terrorists who act alone. One person terrorist goes into any factory and does something terrible. So it's like a lone wolf. It was an individual act of brutality. So in terms of intent, there was a big difference. Now, if we move forward, content both were bad. In terms of consequence, what was the result of that? Overall, if you look at the big picture, the Kauravas were the evil side. And therefore, they needed to be stopped. So the killing of Abhimanyu, in terms of consequences, the killing of Abhimanyu, it led to adharma becoming stronger, at least for that day, because the warrior protecting dharma had been killed. Of course, the next day Arjuna not only neutralized and killed Jayadratha, but he devastated the Kaurava army also. And that was a big morale boosting win for the Pandavas. Because in terms of optics, what happened was the Kauravas dedicated their entire army for protecting one general. And Arjuna still managed to kill that Jayadratha. So the entire army, what was the message? If we together cannot stop one warrior from the opposing side, how can we take down the entire opposing side? So the next day turned out to be good. But at least in that particular incident, the adharma became stronger. Whereas, if you consider the killing of Drona, that led to adharma becoming weaker. It is not just in terms of that side being killed, somebody from that side being killed, but Duryodhana's morale was severely weakened. 3 days after that, the war ended. So Karna was the commander for 2 days, and Shalva for 1 day, Ashwatthama for 1 night. So, in terms of long-term consequences, there is certainly a difference. So, yes, both sides did wrong, but not all wrongs are of the same nature. You cannot say that Pandavas and Kauravas are both equally bad because both of them did wrong things. No. If you see before the war, the Pandavas did not do anything wrong. The Pandavas did not try to poison in the Kauravas. The Pandavas did not try to burn the Kauravas. The Pandavas did not try to steal the wealth of the Kauravas in a rigged gambling match. So if you look at the big picture, overall they were definitely the good guys, they were the virtues. But in that particular context, something was terrible. And that was just the cost of war. It's brutal. So Krishna, in one sense, demonstrates the verse which we talk about, Sarvarambha hi doshina. Every endeavor is covered by fault. And one cannot just give up one's duty because it's faulty. So if you consider this lesson, many times while Krishna taught this lesson, many warriors in Indian history, Indian Kshatriyas, they forgot this lesson. So for example, when some Islamic invaders came to India, and this is not to target Islam, we are talking about broad ethics over here. And we're talking about what is right and what is wrong and how to decide that. So anybody else could also use the strategy. But when some invaders came to India, they used a particularly cynical strategy. They knew that these Indian Hindu kings, they considered cows to be sacred. So what they did was, right in front of their armies, they would keep hundreds of cows. And the Indian warriors would think, how can we kill cows? We can't. And they would not shoot. And from behind the cows, the opponents would keep shooting. Now, here, what needs to be done? Killing cows is terrible. And shooting cows to kill them is terrible. But if they're not killed, then those aggressors are going to win. And if they win, then they will kill maybe hundreds and thousands of cows afterwards. So that's a routine part of their culture. They may destroy temples, they may destroy Vedic culture, they may kill the sages and the Brahmanas. So sometimes war requires taking hard decisions. And if one has a very understanding of morality as very categorical, this is right and this is wrong, then one cannot function in human life. That's why Krishna says here, every endeavor is covered by fault. Now that does not mean anything and everything is right. One has to have moral evaluation. So say the current war, again I'm talking about principles, I'm not taking side of any particular group over here. Say if there are terrorists, if there are people who are coming into civilian territory and they are killing anyone and everyone whom they can find, that is the intentional targeting of civilians. And on the other side, there are warriors who are deliberately hiding in civilian areas. There are warriors who have made their bunkers and their tunnels under civilian areas. And then to kill the warriors, civilians have to be targeted. The two are not the same. One is the intention is to spread terror by killing civilians. The other is to kill warriors, and for that purpose, sometimes civilians have to be killed. So these two are different. And India has also faced this in Kashmir, and for example, there was Punjab, there's Khalistan over there. So and now the Khalistan terror has been neutralized. Now, where there are some people who are not terrorists who might have been killed at that time, yes, it's possible. Sometimes there's in war that is what's called as collateral damage. Collateral damage is where you want to kill someone, but then somebody else gets killed. That's just unavoidable. Now, Britain was bombed by Germany, and about 60,000 British were killed in the bombing. And then the British bombed Germany, and they bombed around 2 million Germans were killed. Dresden was a civilian area in Germany and was completely bombarded by the British. So, now, was that the right thing to do? Well, the cost of war is good. But now, not every single action necessarily becomes right. Not every single action is necessarily wrong. We have to look at the context. So now, when broadly we understand this intent, content, and consequence. So what does it mean for all of us? I talk about evaluation, and lastly, I talk about engagement for us, and I conclude the talk that as devotees, we understand the broad principle that we live in a complex world. And because we live in a complex world, there are sometimes gray areas. Now, I'll talk about two extremes. One is to absolutize everything. That means to see everything only in terms of black and white. This is right and this is wrong. If you do this, you are wrong. And the other extreme is to relativize everything. To see everything only in terms of shades of gray. Oh, there is nothing such as right and wrong. If you feel it is right, you do that. If you feel it is wrong, you don't do that. And society can't function like that. Isn't it? We live in society. If say somebody is speedy, somebody goes way above speed, and the cop pulls him over. Why did he go so fast? He says, actually, I didn't think I was going fast. Well, what you think doesn't matter. My speedometer says that you are going way above speed. So in society, you cannot function based on your feelings. There have to be some objective parameters. And those objective parameters are where contextualize comes in. Contextualize means that when somebody has done some action, we don't just come down on that person like a thunderbolt because you did something wrong. But that does not also mean that anything and everything, whatever that person has done, we just accept it as right. So we look at the context. As if somebody has done something wrong, we talk with them. We give them a hearing. Not necessarily to accept what they have done, but to understand why they did it. And once we do that, then we decide appropriately what is the right thing to do in that situation. So broadly, when we contextualize, so I'll conclude with this point. This is itself a whole different class. Maybe I'll talk about this tomorrow. But when there is wrongdoing, there are basically three kinds of wrongdoings. So, or three kinds of wrongdoing or wrongdoers, we can say. Generally, after somebody has done wrong, internally, they should feel some remorse. Oh, I did something wrong. And externally, there should be some reform. So, internal remorse, external reform. So, broadly, humans can be put into three categories. There's people in goodness. This can be associated with the mode of goodness. But this is not necessarily mode of goodness. People have virtue. They will try not to do wrong. But if there is wrong, there will be both remorse and reform. I did something bad and I not need to do it. Now, there are sometimes people with weakness. They may have remorse, but they may not have reform. Again, the same situation, if you do the same wrong. And there are people with wickedness. Not just weakness, but wickedness. And these people, there is neither remorse nor reform. And such people cannot be forgiven. They have to be punished. So I talk about these three categories of wrongdoers. Tomorrow evening we have a session. So I talk about these three kinds of wrongdoings and understanding through scriptural and contemporary examples who falls in which kind of wrongdoing and how to deal with wrongdoing. But the key principle that I discussed today is that not all wrongdoing is the same. and we need to look at the context to understand which is what is right and what is wrong. So to summarize, I discussed three main points. The first point I discussed was about ethics. So ethics can be categorical or they can be contextual. And the Gita itself talks about contextual ethics. Gita is a philosophy, but it is meant to address ethical questions for Arjuna. And if we real life often requires us to discuss 1848, Sarva Arambha Doshi, every endeavor is covered by what? That means Krishna says that there will be some wrong way, look at the bigger context. And then in terms of context, as a matter of evaluation, we here itself in context means what? We look at the content of the action, we look at the intent of the action, and then we look at the consequence of the action. And there we did evaluation of, we compared the killing of Abhimanyu and the killing of Drona. So, well, the content, in terms of content, both were terrible, but in terms of at least intent, there was a big difference. Intent, you could say, killing of Abhimanyu was an act of wickedness in terms of the vocabulary that we used. It was cold-blooded. It was a cold-blooded conspiracy. Whereas killing of Drona was a hot-headed impulse. So cold-blooded versus hot-headed. And then finally, we discussed in terms of for our engagement, what we need to do is when we are trying to understand how to act or how to deal with people who have done something wrong, we try to give them a hearing, hear them, so that we try to understand where they are coming from, what were they thinking. Don't just look at the action, but look at the bigger picture. And then by that hearing, we can evaluate whether their action, if the person is goodness, the person is a weakness, or the person is in wickedness. And accordingly, we decide how to act. So how to respond to these three kinds of wrongdoings that I talk in tomorrow's session. Any questions or comments? If there's no question, then I think my class was a wrongdoing.
The other way, very clear.
Why did Drona was a teacher for discipline? When he knew that he was born to kill him, why did he train him?
Why did Drona train Drishtadyumna? Well, humans are complex, and why people do certain things, it's very difficult to say. But broadly speaking, in that particular context, he felt that as a teacher, he should not discriminate. And he also felt that actually, some teachers can immediately evaluate, really those who are trained, how good this person is. So he also felt Dushadana will never be actually a threat to him. So in one sense, he thought that if I train Dushadana, and after that, Dushadana has been born to kill me. But if that can be thwarted, that will be a great frustration for Drupada. So on one side was his broad-mindedness, he said that I should teach everyone, but on the other side was also he wanted to further thwart Drupada's intention. So both motivations were there, broadly speaking. Okay. Thank you. Yes, please.
As you said, motive leads to the action and then the consequence. So some people will have a very bad motive, but the action will be very good. Sometimes they have very good motive, but they seem to be very arrogant. Their actions are very arrogant, very good motive inside. So is the motive that determines the result of the action? Because the action might be good or bad with the motive, whatever the motive it is. So can we understand that with the right motive will give the result, not based on the action.
Okay. Will the right motive give the right result all the time? Well, life is complex, isn't it? That the Pandavas' intention was right when they sent Abhimanyu into the Chakravyuh. They just wanted to protect their army. And in terms of content, they had a good plan. So it was not, they were not being reckless. But the result was, unfortunately, that Abhimanyu was killed. So in the world, the world is such a complex place, but there is no guarantee that when we do a particular action, we always turn out right, just because our intention is good. We also have to consider complexity of the real world. So now, had Yudhishthira done something wrong? He didn't feel that he had done something wrong. He thought, I am meant to protect my citizens, but for protecting myself, I send the 16-year-old boy to his death. What kind of king am I? In fact, later on, when he felt that I should not become a king, one of the thoughts that was burdening him was this: I caused the death of my nephew, who was just like my son. So if he had to redo that decision again, maybe he would not have done that decision. So sometimes, suppose a doctor gives a particular treatment. The intention is to treat the patient, and based on that particular information that they have, they make a particular diagnosis. They give a treatment. But then that treatment has some unwanted effects. Maybe it's contraindicative, and they didn't know that that patient had some complication. So then those effects, is the doctor culpable for that? Well, doctor may not be legally culpable. If the doctor had overlooked something which they should have noticed, then they're culpable. But he just didn't know. And doctor would not be legally culpable. But still, once the doctor comes to know, they should not do it again. Isn't it? So there is a huge polarization within our movement with vaccines. And one of the reasons is that it is more of a contextual ethics thing. So now we could go about and say that big pharma, this whole COVID pandemic was a conspiracy arranged by big pharma so that this kind of vaccine could be put into people's body. Well, maybe that might be a little bit extreme. Some people might advocate that, but some people may have reservations about, I don't want to put vaccine is not tested in my body. And if that is a matter of priority for them, that's up to them. Now somebody else may say that, okay, this is the way the society is functioning. And this is not a battle I want to fight. So I want to go along with the way society is going. And that's also okay. So bhakti is not meant to legislate every single decision. Bhakti is meant to ultimately equip us with our conscience, or equip our intelligence and our conscience so that we can make decisions. So just because we can say that intention is important. And your specific question was, some people's intentions might be good, but their actions might be bad. Or some people's intentions might be bad, but their actions might be good. Well, that's why we have to look at the full picture. Like Duryodhan, his action towards Karna was very good. And Karna was not allowed to fight in the duel. He said, I will make you king. But his purpose, his action was good at that time. But his intent was what? He wanted Karna to become a pawn in this fight against the Pandavas. And eventually that friendship with Duryodhan led to the degeneration of Karna's character. So we see there are two different situations over here. One is that we can only look at the content. This is what I'm going to talk about tomorrow's class elaborately. That we can only look at the content of the action. Because we don't know what's going on in people's mind. And we can't see the future. But if somebody is doing the same thing again and again and again, then that indicates that this is not just a circumstantial mistake that the intent is bad. And if somebody is doing the same thing and it leads to a bad result, and still they don't reform, then even if their intent may not be bad, but maybe this person is not trustworthy. because they're not learning from experience. So that's why we basically have to look at people not just in isolation, but over a period of time to understand where they are. Thank you. Any last question before we stop? So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki Gaur Bhaktananda ki Jai Gaur Premani.